So if I was standing in front of the offline TEDxKanzlerPark audience today, I would ask you one question. What is sport? And sport is a physical activity and not a professional occupation. So I would reckon men in the audience would say something like, oh, it's the force, it's the energy, it's the thrill, it's the rush, it's the power. And women in the audience, I imagine, might say something like, this is something I don't do, or this is not my thing, or I'm not sporty. So why such a difference? And why is sport so important to gender equality and fighting the gender violence? As many TEDx speakers, I have a personal story behind it. When I was a little girl, my mom wanted me to be feminine. That entailed taking me to every dance class possible. There was ballet, there was gymnastics, there was ballroom dancing, everything. And for some reason, I did not fit in any of those classes. Sometimes quite literally. I was told that I could not become a ballerina because I was too wide on the bone. And we arrived at the point where, I was not kind of welcome anywhere. And that was when I told my mom, I want to pick up my own sport. And luckily for me, my mom agreed. So I dived into the sports menu offered at my school. And I tried literally everything there was on the board. So it was volleyball, it was table tennis, it was football, and then there was basketball. And basketball was not the most obvious choice. First, because it was only for boys. And second, because it was only for high school boys, and I was in middle school. So the problem was that I could not do anything. And I was clearly much less physically sophisticated than them. But I loved the sport so much that I swore to myself that in a half year's time, they will be fighting to get me on their team. And they did. And it happened because I literally pressed on. I sweated through all those practices, and I had to do more than anyone just to keep playing. And it wouldn't be possible without the support of my female coach, who was very, very encouraging. What has this taught me? It taught me I could do anything. It taught me I could overcome any adversity in life. It taught me that there is nothing, that impossible is literally nothing. And I carried this on into my adult life. And I created the organization that actually aims to empower women through sport, because I have seen the transformational capacity that the sport and physical activity as a platform has. But getting back to the initial question, why there is such a difference in perception of sport by males and females, and how sport is related to gender equality and how it can actually help to overcome it. So we start from the basic notion of gender inequality. It all stems from the idea that somehow women need men not only for love, not for partnership, not for friendship, but for protection. Women need men for survival, and it is impossible the other way around. And this frailty myth started in the 19th century, but the historical data was compiled in such a way that we all believe that we are in fact inferior to men physically. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, if we ask the right questions, this myth can be debunked very easily. Let me give you a few examples. For instance, in the 1990s, a leading Ice Age scholar, Olga Soffer, discovered that in fact the Paleolithic women were very strong physically because they had to provide for their families. In fact, they provided up to 70% of the family's nutrition. What did that mean? Well, it actually meant that they had to hunt. And contrary to the common belief that women were just sitting in their caves waiting for men to come back with a mammoth, women had to hunt themselves. And they had to lay traps, and they had to fight small animals, to hunt the game, and do all the hard work that we believe that women were not doing. And then there's ancient Greece and Rome. There was a thing called bull vaulting. And it is little known that in bull vaulting, the young families of both males and females were taking equal part. Then there is Sparta. We all know about the Spartan warriors and how strong and impeccable they were. But they could not live with women up to the age of 30. So that meant that women, in fact, had to provide for themselves. And there is a lot of historical data that suggests that women, the Spartan women, could ride chariots, could throw discus, could throw javelins, and were actually not bad fighters. And given all this, how did we have this preconception that we have right now? Well, we have to thank the 19th century for that again. In the 19th century, this frailty myth and this femininity training was taken up a huge notch. So basically, a woman could not take any endeavor, be it physical or mental, because all her energy had to be devoted only to one task, and that was childbearing. And it gave rise to this concept that a woman had to be small, narrow-boned, and harmless. And here we arrive at the second point, which is not only the gender equality, but a worse consequence of this, which is gender violence. A predator would not attack the prey, which this predator deems as harmless, as harmful, as capable of providing an adequate response. So if men see women as fragile, incapable, and physically underdeveloped, it gives them a sort of a concept that they can do women harm because they just can. And sport, in a nutshell, is basically giving one's body a space to be. It's basically exploring the capacity of one's body. And this is something that women have been so long deprived of. And if we stand up for our bodies, I think we'll be able to stand up for our rights. And sport has an immense capacity to do this. And we have been doing that to our girls and women deliberately. Physical education is not encouraged in young girls the same way as it is encouraged in young boys. And this needs to be changed. And even for older women, they need to shake off those preconceptions that are incapable. There are some things that they can do. They can't run, they can't sweat, they can be uncomfortable and take up space. They can. We can. And this is exactly what sport teaches you, apart from the benefits that have been long explored about the confidence that sport gives you, about this physical which turns into mental, this physical self-esteem that turns into the mental self-esteem, where you can go and do things because you can. And this is something that I would really like to stress, that we cannot overlook sport as a huge domain that can literally provide a groundbreaking platform for fighting gender inequality, and gender violence. We cannot say that one type of activism in one area is possible without another. Sport is just a part of that, and we need to stress that the way women perceive their bodies, the way women can reclaim their bodies with the help of sport cannot be underestimated. And I would like to say that there are examples where the authorities and the policymakers understand that There are wonderful examples from Vienna and from Malmo, where the city planners have provided more areas for girls to play sports, because they saw that the figures were low, and instead of just brushing that off, they literally investigated into that issue, and they saw that girls felt uncomfortable playing in open spaces where they had to compete with boys for those. Because getting back to the point, we encourage boys to play and to be active more. But it is an easily reversed process, and this is something that is in our hands to do. And this is something I'm so committed to as an activist and as a feminist. So get out there and play and experience your body to the fullest. Realize your body's potential. Feel the rush, feel the power, feel the thrill, feel the force.